Etiseng, my name is AKwaaba. Welcome back to my channel. I have a new video for you today. I am doing another growing up African video, but I usually do the West, and today we are bringing it to the East. Ooh. I have my friends here, Hana, Wodaje, and Ghila, Andemeskel, here to give you their perspective of growing up African. Let's get to it, and they can introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Ghila Andemeskel. I'm Ethiopian and Eritrean. The man with the fro. Y'all probably already know me. It's okay, no autographs or anything. I'm here to, to claim my fame, my 15 minutes of fame.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hana Wodaje. I am also Eritrean, Ethiopian, and yeah, I'm here. Excited to be here with AC.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being on my show today. I wanted to ask, to start it all off, kind of give me a little backstory to how you both grew up. Like, did you grow up with siblings? Did you grow up here? Like, give me a little bit of a background of it.
You go first.
I grew up in America for most of my life. I came here when I was 7. Grew up with siblings. Grew up with 2 of my brothers. Most of the time it was one of my brothers, but second one came a couple years after we came. So I spent 7 years in Ethiopia, and then the rest of the 21 years of my life to this point in America. So it was cool. It was an interesting dynamic. It was just me, my father, and my brothers. So mostly male household. It was just an interesting dynamic of just like moving to America, adjusting to all that stuff. Having siblings and arguing and fighting, the usual sibling stuff, with the slight blend of, African uniqueness or Ethiopian uniqueness that comes in an Ethiopian household and dynamics. My dad's the Eritrean side, so primarily grew up with that kind of culture. He spoke Eritrean, now Marcos, half and half, so sometimes I be getting words confused, but that doesn't matter right now.
Do you speak both?
No.
Oh, okay.
I could understand commands in Tigrinya, the Eritrean language, because my dad gave commands. And Amharic, though, I could understand it pretty well, and I could kind of speak it. Depends on the other individual's fluency. If I'm talking to older people, I could do pretty well. If I'm talking to people my age or younger that learned it, they talk a lot faster, and they use a lot more slang, so it's a bit harder for me to understand.
Yeah.
Same. And for me, I grew up with both Eritrean, Ethiopian households. I think both of my sides were very proud to be like Eritrean and proud to be Ethiopian. So I think sometimes there's a little bit of like a conflict in regards to like what side I could relate to more. My parents are also pastors, so Habashas could be very religious.
Yes.
So growing up, Pentecostal and religious parents, and then just in general, how Africans can be, always watching you. So you're kind of watching what you're doing, how you're acting. Is the community talking about you? So how do you navigate, and like how do you navigate accordingly, so you don't bring shame to your household, and that's more amplified in the church, I would say. But I think in terms of like positives, like there was a lot of great positives, like fellowship and like community, feeding each other, a lot of like jokes and things that we weren't allowed to do, like in terms of like going out and like things that my other friends were doing. A lot of like my cousins and I would just do prank calls and like laugh, and like I think that we were able to just like create that community amongst each other, which was really nice, I would say. And I think that when I was younger, I was not as proud to be, African, or proud to be who I was. And like the older that I've gotten,
I am so sorry.
Okay. I was just saying, like, I think the older that I've gotten, the more proud I have been to be of where I'm from and being African in my roots. And I think that that's something that's like really beautiful to see now. And I think that it wasn't something that I was as proud when I was younger, but as I've grown and come into my own more, I think it's something that's more prevalent, which is beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So you guys are both half and half.
Yes.
How is that? Like, does any other side look at you differently or treat you differently? growing up or even now? How was that?
It's like the dynamic of it or any tension of it can come depending on how close you are to like your Eritrean side. It can also happen with the Ethiopian side too, depending on like what ethnic group you're in. So Eritrea has like 9 ethnic groups, and Ethiopia has like a huge amount. But it has like 3 main ones that are like mostly in political rotation. So depending on like how close you are to those communities and so on, depends the tension. But since Eritrea is the one that fought for liberation, right? So that side of the group, you're gonna be a lot more prideful about like the fact that you have freedom and so on, right? Then your Ethiopian side, depending on like what you are, if you're like Amara, so that's like the second largest ethnic group, and they're very prideful about this like united Ethiopia outside of tribe and so on. This history of the Ethiopia that beat the Italians and all this kind of stuff, right? Because that's a lot of their history. So they're more like we're all one and so on. So that it can be like kind of careless of like the reality of some of the other ethnic groups. So like for me, I've always grown up with my father, and then my uncle has been like the supporting figure in the family, and he fought in the war against Ethiopia. So he's always reminded us of the realities of like where he came from. But my dad on the other side is just like similar to my brother and I now. He's very academic-y. So like he prioritized school, and he thought like the ethnic conflicts and stuff like that was petty, and that he was beyond it, and that as long as he focused on school and focused on like making a life for his family, that's what was most important. That'll never get to him. It got to him, but he never like spoke about it like as we grew up. He just kept emphasizing the same things that the same mentality that he had when he was younger. But our uncle is completely different. Which is interesting because when I graduated from college, I wore a traditional clothing, but it had the Ethiopian colors to honor my mom, and my uncle would not take pictures of me with that kind of clothing. Because for him, it's being around the symbolism of the Ethiopian colors, and it's an insult to the brothers that fought and died with him. So those kind of things to navigate, but it just depends after like as you grow up and you become an adult and so on, those are the kind of boundaries you or understands you navigate with your parents and family members. And then the real things too, like depending on your proximity to that kind of stuff. So I have like friends that were in Eritrea, that's only a couple years older than me, that were in the capital when it was being bombed and stuff like that. So for them, it's a lot more visceral, right? It's not a thing about their parents, it's about what they experience. And for me, being in Ethiopia and being around ethnic conflict in Ethiopia, so it's just like that also plays a factor in like how you navigate it and what things you have affinity towards and what things you don't have affinity towards. So I can never be like ultra naturalistic about either side. I never was in Eritrea. I wasn't born there. I was born in Ethiopia. But I know the realities of Ethiopian brutality, so I can never like, oh, I'm Ethiopian, hoorah, or Eritrean, right? But I note the significance of being both, and I love both cultures.
I agree with Ghila. I think there's like a lot of trauma, I would say, just on both sides. But, you know, being that there was a war, and when Eritrea is obviously smaller. And so with my mother's side, who's Eritrean, you know, there were a lot of my grandma's siblings who actually fought in the war and were killed. And so there is definitely a different type of like proximity to the trauma when it's like firsthand. And you know, not to downplay my dad's side, who's also Ethiopian. I think it's fair to be proud of where you're from. And my parents met each other and got married amongst the chaos. So that was definitely drama. I was like, love is love. But I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're a traitor. But my dad was like wonderful, and he's amazing and so kind, and he loved my mom. And so
I love how they fought through that.
They fought through it. It's a beautiful Ethiopian Eritrean love story. You know, they came to be pastors and went to Bible school together and all that. So it was beautiful. But I think that in regards to just like, you know, it was happening fresh, and it was happening right then and there. So I think that was really challenging, I would say, for myself and like for them. And my parents don't talk much about things. They think that like sometimes like politics can be dividing. And the trauma there was, and also I think with my Eritrean side, they also wanted to make sure that we were proud of where we came from. And then with my Ethiopian side, same thing. And so just figuring out the balance between the two. And how to also be proud of where I was from, and like honoring both identities, I think was sometimes challenging, I would say. But I think that it was beautiful to still understand where I was in terms of my Eritrean side and also my Ethiopian side.
Yeah.
And also with the languages, I would say, like kind of what Ghila was mentioning about, like, you hear all these different languages, and I have, like, my cousins, you know, when they would leave Eritrea or Ethiopia, like where they grew up, they would know that language. I have cousins who grew up in India and Saudi, and like they speak Hindu and they speak like Arabic, and then I have my family who speaks Tigrinya and Amharic, so, and I'm barely learning English. And then you're in America, and I grew up in Canada, and in Canada, you know, they teach you French.
Yeah.
And in America, they teach you Spanish.
Oh, goodness.
And so I'm just horrible with languages. But meanwhile, it's like my cousins are speaking 9 languages. They're like, yeah, just throw that in the bag. And I think languages were always challenging for me. And I promise I only passed my French class in Canada because my teacher liked me. But, like, I think, like,
you gotta do what you gotta do.
I just made her laugh, and I finessed those classes. But I think, like, it was just challenging because you hear different words in different languages.
Yeah.
And, like, command words, or, like, you know, when they're upset, when they're happy, religious words, or words you hear in church. And I think just, like, you know, the universal words that everyone understands, compliments, etc. But yeah, I think it's a little difficult navigating just because you felt like you couldn't really fit in either side. And not in a negative way. I don't think either side had bad intentions. But I think, like what Ghila was mentioning about his uncle, also for us, it was like you want to honor where you come from. Right. And when you, like, shed blood and you have, like, you know, all of this that you honor and that you have family members that passed away for, it can be hard. And everyone has their perspective, so you don't want to knock it down.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
How was it going to school out here? Did you go to school in America at any point other than college?
Yes,
but also, like, how was it for the both of you going to school in America and having this background of being Eritrean and Ethiopian? Like, did people make fun of you for it, or were they accepting of it? Were you even, like, forthcoming of that?
You go, Canada.
So I was born in D.C. In Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, nice.
And then I was in Oklahoma from, like, the age of, like, 3 to, like, I would say, like, 7th grade. And so during that time, I can remember in Oklahoma, it was Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, right by Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so kind of like a religious, like, area. But there were Black people. There were some Africans, but I can remember instances of, like, you know, the African booty scratcher. Yeah. Not from everybody. Right. I had some friends. Like, you know, I was kind of like, I had friends. It was cool. I remember I was, like, trying out for, like, the cheerleading team or squad, and, like, you know, the girls were nice to me. The white boys were mean. They were really rude. They were the ones that would do, like, make the comments, the jokes. Yeah. And in their minds, they probably thought it was funny at that time. And then now I'm sure in retrospect, they've grown, hopefully. But yeah, like, you would hope. But I remember that was the time when I was little, like, I did not acknowledge, like, I didn't want to acknowledge being African. I didn't want to acknowledge being Black. I remember trying to stray away from, like, my Blackness and, like, being proud of my heritage. And, like, also I didn't like when my parents would speak in Ethiopian dialect, Amharic. My dad couldn't understand Tigrinya, which is the Eritrean dialect, so my mom, who's Eritrean, would have to not speak her language for him. Okay. But it's okay, you know, my dad would try to speak Tigrinya, but he just was like, it's a harder language. In my opinion, I think the Eritrean dialect is much harder to learn to speak. It's like harsher words, almost sounds like Arabic. And, like, Amharic, which is the Ethiopian dialect, is a bit, like, softer, and it's, like, easier to speak. Personally, that's how I feel. So my parents would speak that language, and I would be like, no, don't speak it so loud, or in the grocery store, like, certain things I would be so embarrassed about. I remember in retrospect, but I think, like, being in the South in the States and that point in my life, like, it wasn't a horrible experience, it wasn't the best. I definitely remember just not being proud of my roots. And then I moved to Canada for the latter half of my, like, high school years, so until I was 18, and I moved to the Bay Area for college. I think being in Canada, so Canada has a lot of people ask if there's Black people in Canada. That's the question I've gotten a lot. There are Black people in Canada, y'all, okay? Actually, there's a lot of people from the Caribbean and, like, the islands. Also a lot of Haitians and, like, more in, like, the French part. So, like, the Haitian people and, like, Quebec, Montreal, etc. So there's a lot of Jamaicans, like people from the islands in that regard, and like a lot of people who just couldn't get into the States, to Canada, as their second option. So there was definitely a lot of people of color in general, and so I think that being in Canada, I actually think I felt more, even though I went to a private school, Christian private school, I felt more comfortable in my roots and like where I was from, and I think being around more Habesha people and people from my country and the church and all that, I think that I was able to come more into my own, I would say. And then we were in a border city from Detroit, so I think that there's a lot of Black people there. So I think I started to become more comfortable with like who I was, where I was from, and all of that. So
Canadians, eh? I think your Oklahoma experience is similar to mine. The usual jokes. At the time, I didn't get them, but African booty scratcher, starving Marvin, that kind of stuff. Things about the eyes. So if you know Habesha people, the two things we have is big foreheads and like popping eyes. So jokes about those features and stuff like that. I spent most of my schooling in America, so from like 2nd grade onwards, I was out here in the Bay Area. So the biggest adjustments in regards to like education and just like going to school out here is communicating, or like the interactions between kids and like just the joking nature of it. Like when I lived in Ethiopia, it's kind of changed now since I've been back, but like kids are more comfortable making fun of each other and stuff like that. But when I lived there, there's like little room for that. Like you don't make fun of somebody unless you mean to disrespect them, right? So coming here, that was like the biggest adjustment for me. Like, oh, you're making fun of me. Like, we must have issues, right? Like, there must be.
Were you fighting people?
So yes, I was about to get into that.
That's common though. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. That makes sense because that's what you were
right. So it's like I didn't know why they had issues with me, but now they're making fun of me. There must be something wrong between us. Like there must be some conflict.
I don't blame you.
So we have to resolve the conflict, right? Another thing is the disciplinary structure of American things. Like there's no tolerance around violence, even if yours is justified. That kind of stuff. So everybody gets suspended. Everybody gets referrals. That kind of stuff. Right? So I didn't get that. If somebody's picking on me, right, then I'm justified in fighting. And which is not the worst, because in Ethiopia they were whooping our asses or whooping our butts in class. So I was getting disciplined out there too, but not for fighting, for more like talking and being disruptive in the classroom. So I'm just high energy.
It's okay.
But so I got in a decent amount of fights. So I came out here when we first came out in 2001. It was my dad, my brother, and my sister. My sister would live with my uncle and his wife, and then my dad and my brother and myself would live together.
Okay.
But all three of us went to the same elementary school. She has 4 years on me, so she went there for a short period of time. But she's a lot more light-skinned, so she looks a little bit Middle Eastern.
Oh, okay.
So they made fun of her for 9/11. We came out a month before 9/11. We started school 3 months after we came.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she was getting bullied for being an African immigrant, but also because she looked Middle Eastern. People were like making terrorist jokes on her, talking about that your cousin on those planes. It's not funny, but it's messed up. It's messed up.
My cousin came during that same time as well, so
it was a hard time for immigrants. It was a very hard time. Don't make fun of immigrants, kids. And then me and my brother would get the starving Marvin, African booty scratcher jokes. A lot of times we take it literally, so I was just like, I wasn't scratching my butt, so I didn't get the joke, right? And then I didn't know who Starving Marvin was. Like, I didn't watch South Park and stuff like that, so I don't know who that character is. I still don't even know what that character. Means. It's an Ethiopian character from South Park. Oh. So that one was, so that, the joke is accurate. That we ain't starving out there like that, but, so in the, during the war and stuff like that, there was mass famines, even before the war, there was mass famines in Ethiopia. And so South Park made, like, Starving Marvin stuff. And they were making fun of the Ethiopians, they were making fun of the industrial aid complex in America that abuses aid and uses it to enrich white people. That's a whole different. Okay. But they were calling the Starving Marvin, African booty scratch, all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. I didn't get it at first, but after a while, people make fun of you and stuff like that, or your mama jokes and stuff. Yeah. So that's like straight disrespect, right? Yeah. So I was just like, okay, we're gonna have to fight. So I'll get in fights in classrooms. I'll get in fights at recess. I'll get in fights at lunch. I'll get in fights after school. And then the teachers will send you to like what is this, a detention. They'll make you write 1,000 lines talking about not fight, and then you get sent home with a letter. I'll try to throw the letter away, but there'll be a call. So my dad will beat my ass. It's a violent cycle. It took me a couple years to learn not to get in fights.
Yeah.
It's never worth it. It's never worth it.
Because it's like you're doing it at school. You're getting what you want out, but then it's like you go home and you have to deal with
your family.
Yeah,
you can't fight back in that situation.
No. You can try.
But then you realize, like, it's like our parents migrate there, and they're also trying to assimilate and like, make the best.
And they want you to be
for us. And they want us like go to school, make those grades, be the best that you can, so you can be okay. So you know when you get that call from the school,
when you get that call, they're mad. So it's
they're mad. And we would lie. You remember this?
Oh my gosh! I used to get like a red slip and a green slip every week. I once got a red slip. I'm like, okay, where's my construction paper? I need a
the principal makes you call.
Like,
I remember this one time. I don't know why I did this. So I was like, I got voted as like literally the president of like my high school.
Yeah.
And I plagiarized this paper.
Oh no!
Sorry, I said this on camera. But I don't know why I did this. I had like basketball practice. I was stressed out, and I had to submit something, and I plagiarized like this part in my law paper for my law class, and I got in trouble. So I'm sitting in my principal's office, and she's like talking to me. She's like, "Hana, I really like you. Like, why did you do this?"
Oh no!
She's like, "You didn't have to do this." I'm crying, and I'm like, "I don't know why I did this. I wish I didn't do this. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what came over me, but I don't know. I don't know. I still don't understand why I had done that. But you know, my French teacher, she was also the teacher for my law class, and she's like, "Hana, why did you do this?" And then I was like, "Oh my god!" The first thing I thought was like, my parents are going to kill me. It wasn't anything else. Not even if they were gonna pass me. It was more so like my parents. I don't want to bring them shame or dishonor. I was like, why did I do this? And then I'm sitting there, and the principal felt so bad for me. She was like, "Should I even tell your parents?"
That's what happens. Because they know.
She saw me. I was already like melting in my chair, and she was like, wow, like I was already going through it, and I already knew to the point where she didn't even feel like it was right for her to call my parents.
I know.
And I was like, no, please don't, because like I understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I did it. And so I think that's a whole different conversation. I think the burden we bear.
No, it's a lot.
Children of like parents, like I think
it's a lot of pressure that you
have to live
up
that causes
to.
you to almost have to mature. And being I'm the oldest. Ghila, I don't know if you're the oldest. You're not the oldest.
I'm the youngest.
He's the
oldest as well.
So yeah, being the oldest sister,
yes,
it can be a lot. And I felt like I brought a lot of shame to my parents, to my siblings, and there were things that I felt like my younger brothers went through as like black men and being targeted in high school, and it was nothing like blatantly like violent, but more so like, you know, just being picked on by the teachers for the same things that I know their white counterparts weren't being picked on about. Yeah. And they would just kind of feed into that. And I'm like, in retrospect, you know, you understand like, okay, wow. Pattern.
Yeah. So as you know also that it wasn't cool back in the day to be African. Now it's a little bit cool. We're trending. We're popular. Do you feel like it's genuine that the splash of being African, now people want to learn about our culture? Do you feel like what people want to know is genuine? Is it just for the music? Is it just for the entertainment?
As an East African,
yes, please speak from that
where
perspective.
Our music's never played in these Afrobeats.
That part.
Afrobeats. Okay. You know, shout out to Fela, the godfather of Afrobeats. Love the music and all that stuff.
Yes.
What is it? Good Life or Good Vibe? That genre of music. What is it? Good. No, before Afrobeat, it's like Good Vibe, Good Life. It's like a genre, something like that.
I want to quote, West Africans call a party African, but don't play East African music. Don't talk to just the girls. Play our music, okay? Okay.
I don't know. That's a beat that she got. But I would say that it's
are you talking about High Life and Hip Life?
Yeah, High Life. Yes. Shout out to High Life.
Yes.
But I would say it's a combination. Like, the Western drive of Afrobeats, because Afrobeats has been popping in Europe, because it's like the huge population of West Africans in Europe and so on, and their integration into entertainment, the entertainment industry out there. Now that's becoming more of a thing here in America or stateside. And whenever something becomes commodified, people are going to mess with it. People are gonna love it, and that's gonna drive a lot of non-genuine attention. So people are gonna, gonna have people praising clothes, mimicking the sound, Drake, and just a bunch of different people like taking bits of it because they see the financial benefit of it. But you're gonna have genuinely people that were curious, that have wanted to tap in, that might have done a 23andMe or 24 genetics, whatever those things are, right? And that have been like, how do I tap more into this, right? If the culture is popping like that, that's the easiest without doing the most research, right? You don't have to do a bunch of research if you see like this umbrella version of the culture that includes multiple regions of West Africa. So as an East African, like it doesn't impact me as much because it doesn't touch on like that cultural portion of it, but this like gravitation towards like Africa or being African.
Do you feel like they are gravitating towards a little bit of East Africa and like what your culture is about, or do you feel like it's just focused on the West?
I think like the commodity version of it, I think it's the West.
Right.
Like if you live in the Bay, Seattle, or DC, though, you notice like that East African culture in regards to the food has always been a central piece of these areas. And people have always messed with it, especially white people and vegans and stuff. So there's always been like a barrier, though. So, like there haven't been that many like white people opening up Ethiopian shops and stuff like that and stuff. The Ethiopian and Eritrean community is very tight knit in regards to like how they control the culture and stuff like that. But if there is ever a huge surge in the music or other aspects of the culture, you're gonna start seeing people like take up on it, right? There was some European fashion designer that started making like traditional Eritrean Ethiopian style clothing and tried to include it in their fashion, and there was a big backlash. But as things grow,
it's gonna be more acceptable.
But were they giving credit?
No, they weren't giving credit.
That's the problem.
That is the
but
problem.
even if they're giving credit, though, should they be making it as a question?
It's depending on who's doing it.
Yeah, who's doing it. The credit is huge, though, like, in my opinion. Yeah, I definitely can agree with Ghila. I think to a certain extent, it can be genuine from, like, the people. I think in terms of, like, the reasons, I think Black people as a whole, we're really good at, like really becoming a part of mainstream culture. And I think Black people as a whole, we're understanding our roots and understanding like the significance of being like African, Pan-African, understanding our history and how we're all connected. You know, when you realize the effects of like white supremacy and the ways in which we're actually connected and how we're stronger as a unit and all of that. Now you see this stronger ties to being like African, where our roots from, and of course a lot of people in America have ties to West Africa. And so I think that plays a huge role in the reasons why there's been a surge all of a sudden with like West African culture. But I think Afrobeat music is amazing. So I do think that there's been this unification of Black people amongst the diaspora and understanding like their roots, where they come from, and the significance there is. So like this transition from being called like African booty scratcher by not just white folks, but by Black people, now understanding the traumas that white people inflicted on us in regards to us not being proud of where we're from and where we come from. And now there's this surge in understanding our history, going back to the motherland, you know, also growing in that perspective. And also Afrobeat music is beautiful. Like, in a way, I do question, like, why is it called Afrobeat if it's just concentrating on, like, West Africa? But, you know, in a way, I still think that, like, Afrobeat music is amazing. And I think there's, like, this, like, wonderful unification that happens amongst African people and Black people as a whole. And so in that regard, I definitely think it's, like, pure and honest. In terms of, like, commodification and the financial gain, of course, I think there's always a, you know, commercialization that happens in that regard. But I think in certain ways, in a lot of ways, it can be honest and true.
What could they do better? Like, both of you can answer, but what could they do better to... I think that, like, genuine. More so just be inclusive of the diaspora as a whole. I don't know what that could look like. I can say that, like, sometimes, personally, I feel like the beat of Afrobeat, what we're used to, is something that's translatable amongst like what we're used to hearing when we go out. Whereas like maybe what we're used to. Maybe this is more so like what we're used to. Like for me, if I go to like a Habesha wedding, or if I hear Habesha music, or like music, or now like South African music has become more popular, like piano music. Like when you go out, and that's kind of a different beat, but people love it and people play it when you go out now. But I can say like the sounds and the beats and the drums is definitely different in different regions.
And so I definitely think that if you're going to be at an African event or if you're an African DJ, that you should be making sure to be conscious about playing all of those types of music. But I also think Ghila is right too with the cuisine. When you talk about cuisine, East African cuisine is something that's really prevalent, I would say.
I could find
it's really good. But
any restaurant on DoorDash, Uber Eats, I'm always looking for West African.
Yeah,
places.
it's harder.
I can't.
It's harder to find.
I'm glad that
like West African food. That's something
as well.
Interesting that Ghila brought up that I think is fair to state that. Okay, I think in terms of like social settings, in terms of like going out and events and all that, you hear more so West African music being played, Nigerian in particular. Nigerian. But I think in terms of cuisine, definitely more so Ethiopian, Eritrean cuisine is what you'll find.
No, I think it's genuine. I think the way it's progressing is great. I have no problem the way like African Americans or the West Africans or Africans are going about it. I'm just cautious about like other demographics and the American like capitalist structure and so on, and like anything that gets commodified, there's always going to be some type of exploitation or abuse that's going to happen. In regards to like the thing about like the nuances of what makes up Afrobeat and stuff like that, I think a part of that should be touched on. I've seen a couple interviews where the artists themselves go about talking about it, but those interviews never go viral, right? It's always other pieces when they're talking about like other artists or their next project, or if they're going to be featured with an American artist that's popping. But some of the artists do talk about the history of Afrobeat and so on, these kind of things, where the sounds come from, all those kind of things. I think it's important, especially if people want to tap into this. It does come from a region and multiple different cultures and stuff like that, and there is rhythmic differences, and it's good to understand like where those rhythmic differences originate and stuff like that, and what's also being said. You know, what is it? Last became famous of what Burna Boy was actually saying. But a lot of the music, you know, it does go in between like English and the native language and so on. It's a good learning opportunity for people that want to tap into stuff like
find
that.
out what their actual
and I was watching an interview actually with Burna Boy, shout out Burna Boy, but he was talking about like just music as a whole, right? And like even and that's why I think it's a beautiful thing to understand and really realize, like even though you don't know the words, like obviously I'm not Nigerian, you know, we're not Nigerian, a lot of people who aren't Nigerian love Afrobeat music. You don't know what the words are saying, and maybe you can learn them later on, but you still connect to the music, you feel it. There's a sense of like there's almost like endorphins that are released, I would say, in a way.
It's you
almost come alive, sense of community. Everyone looks so happy, and just like in their vibe, in their moment. And I think like something he was talking about, he was like, you know, he has artists that he listens to from India, and he was like, you don't even know what they're saying, but you connect to it. And sometimes you may not necessarily connect to the words, but you connect to the music and the moment, and that's powerful. And I think that it's beautiful to see the ways in which music can be something that's so unifying from a global scale, in a way that heals people and connects people and allows people to just like live regardless of like their, you know, their traumas or what they're going through and where they're from. They're able to be in that space, in that setting. They're able to connect. And so I think that's definitely a very beautiful thing to see. In my opinion, I think that's the beauty of like the Afrobeat movement and just music as a whole from the continent. I think it's such a beautiful thing. And so it's just really nice to see, okay, where is there to grow and come from this, like moving forward even more so.
And I wanted to touch on this real quick. In my last interview with Darius, I talked about him going on the Ghana trip that I am organizing, and you guys are also going on this trip. You are going to Ghana, so what prompted this decision to go?
I feel I'm different than other participants that are going, because I talked to AC about this a long time ago.
I did too.
Before.
Actually, I don't know. I can beg to differ, because Dolores Park, I was like, yes. And Darius,
This is before Dolores Park was even established.
Was it?
Maybe.
But I want to experience the culture, and then when you know people from different regions of the world, I've always, from personal experience, because I've been to other places with people from those areas, it's always a unique experience, because their perspective of it is a lot more unique, a lot more authentic, and it just expands your worldview. And I'm down to do anything that expands my worldview and my perspective on different things. And the East and West are extremely different portions. Africa is a huge continent, so learning about Ghana from a Ghanaian, from your family, and being in that environment and stuff like that is dope. And food.
Yes,
the
food.
Jollof. They be talking about that jollof rice, that goat stew. Y'all got pepper stew too?
We do.
That pepper stew.
Soup, pepper soup.
Pepper soup.
Yes.
So I'm being be out there officially as an ambassador tasting out the food, and I'll have a result of who actually makes the best one.
Oh goodness, I am probably going to have like a video with everybody that went or who wants to be in the video and just talk about their experience as well. So
yes,
we will definitely get your all your food critics.
Yes. So any Nigerians want to find me out to Nigeria so I can give my opinion on that. Liberians, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, I'll judge all this.
Yes.
Jollof still comes from Senegal, so that is the part that I would understand.
It does, but when other people do it better.
I'm just going to leave it at that. Sorry, Senegal. I don't know how y'all left out this conversation. Yes, but I agree with Ghila. I think that it's going to be very exciting to go to Ghana with someone who's from there.
Yes.
I think it's a very unique experience when you get to explore a country from the perspective of someone who is from there and understands like the historical aspects of it. And there's certain things that even if you met people there, when you have like that familiar tie with you, with that person, to be able to go to that country and experience it from their lens, I think is a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very exciting. And I think Ghana as a whole has gotten a lot of credit for its like open arms to bringing people amongst the diaspora in. And so that's going to be really exciting. And the music, the food, Afrochella, all of that. That's going to be very exciting. Yes. I'm very excited.
I'm excited you guys are going.
So excited. Thank you for having us, AC.
I know. I'm so excited
Thank
for
you.
you guys to experience it. Do you think it's going to be a cultural shock for you guys? Or, I mean, you guys are African as well.
Yeah.
So do you think it's going to be any bit of a cultural shock? Y'all be good.
Maybe for me a little bit. Just because I haven't, it's been my first time to the motherland.
Okay.
So I think maybe a little bit, even though I know. But it's different from knowing and being there.
Yeah.
So the shock may not be as like, if I had no understanding. But for the first time, I think it'll be a little bit like,
Yeah. And you just got it.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm known in the Sahara.
That's crazy. Lastly, I wanted to ask, what are you most proud about being both cultures? What do you feel like other people don't get to see that you get to experience about being both?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I think personally for me, I feel like although it's challenging to be both, there's also a beauty to it in the ways in which, for me personally, I think that I've always wanted to like search for my ties to being like a Black woman, but also being African and understanding like my roots in my ties, but understanding my ties to being African as well. And like by both sides, being Ethiopian, being Eritrean, and the ways in which we can all acknowledge being Black in different ways. And so Pan-Africanism. And so that's something I think for me personally, I've been trying to like understand and connect and like my purpose and like what I want to do with my life in this stamp during my time here. And so Black people saying, okay, in America, there's a lot of work that Black people have done in the States, right? In order for us as immigrants, as African immigrants, to be able to be here and navigate in the ways that we do. But there's also ties for Black Americans here in the motherland, right? And what does that look like when you've been displaced? And for me, it's like, okay, there's a beauty to all of it. And there's a connection that we all have, and there's like ways in which we can all connect and enjoy and thrive. And when you come to our country and to our spaces, you can thrive in this regard and you can express yourself in this way. And if there is a disconnect in any way, I'm here to help you feel more comfortable, more tied to that. And the ways in which you don't feel connected, or sometimes I think for us, when you're first generation, sometimes you don't even feel connected to where you're from. You almost feel more connected to America, and there's the issues we have here in this country, but obviously when you grow up in a certain space, you're going to feel more connected to that space. And so there's still like disconnects that I think that as Africans we have here in America that we don't necessarily feel, even though we're from like the country back home. And for us, like being half and half, it can be challenging. So I think that unification of all of that can help us become closer to who we are in our identity. And yes, just being Black and embracing all of that.
Yeah.
And being African as well. All one and the same.
Yes.
I agree. You know, I want to shout out the Ethiopian and Eritrean genetics.
Yes.
The Ethiopian highlands.
Period.
Cheekbones and all, and hair.
Oh.
Forehead.
Forehead.
Oh,
You don't got a forehead, you don't got a beauty.
That's
Look at Rihanna.
Period.
Pearly whites, good smile.
Yeah.
The iron and injera.
Mm.
You know, not everybody's born with endurance like in East Africa.
Okay,
You know?
let them know.
They walk a mile and get tired. We walk 10.
Hey.
And walk
And
some
these
10 more.
shoulders, and these shoulders.
You know,
Okay.
they be hating on the shoulder dancing. Be talking about y'all dance with. One, we have a plethora of dances that are better than any other dance.
It's true. And
Two,
our food go crazy.
Food go crazy.
And that's all period.
and the shoulder dances, you know, people just don't know how to maneuver and isolate their shoulders like that. Except, you know, if you're from the Bay, you know, turf talk and all that stuff. You know how to isolate everything. That's a different, you know. So that's what I appreciate, you know, the cultural aspects.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty that comes from all cultures, and I'm happy to be born and to know that kind of stuff and have family that reinforce those aspects of it.
Yeah.
I'm also happy with the perspective, the worldly perspective that it's given me. As I mentioned, like one of the reasons I want to travel to Ghana is to see another perspective of the world.
Yes.
I'm fortunate to have been able to immigrate to America, even though the circumstances weren't fortunate.
Yeah.
You make lemonade out of lemons, whatever it is. You know, you make thif. You made injera out of thif. You know, you make churro out of chickpeas. Misir out of now. People aren't gonna understand what that is, but I'm happy about the perspective of being half and half, being an immigrant, being Ethiopian and Eritrean, because it lets me appreciate life in a way I feel like I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
Empathize with what's happening around the world and so on, and be able to appreciate the moment and everything that I'm given, because I know how precious it is, and how easily it could just be taken away. So I'm happy about that. In addition to all the other stuff, the music and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Ethiopian men are the best men.
Oh goodness.
You know, you
Great.
never heard about Ethiopian cheating, you know, but. You know, the music, if you listen to old school Ethiopian music, it's about nostalgia, loving the land. Same thing with Eritrean music, it's about love, meeting a girl from the country and you live in the city, or being in the country and you meet a girl in the city. I don't know why they never meet in the country or the city together, but it's stuff like that.
They're just missing each other.
You know, it's seasoning to that culture that I love.
As Africans as a whole, we are a giant. There are resources. Us as a people, we're more than capable of coming together and doing what needs to be done for ourselves. And we don't need anybody else to tell us what we need. We're intelligent, we're smart, we're beautiful. We have the culture, we have the food, we got the vibes, we have the energy, we have everything it takes. So that's just a reminder of who we are and where we can go. And that's, I think, the beauty of being African, right?
Yes, and I think that is a beautiful note to end on.
Yes.
But I did want to play a quick little game with you all.
Okay.
Called This or That. We're going to start it off a little fun. East Africa or West Africa?
Oh.
That's it? That's easy.
Pick! Which
East
one?
Africa.
East Africa.
Okay.
What do they even got over there? All right.
Oh, okay. Alright. That's why I said it was easy. I know what you were going to pick already. Dora Watts or Lamb Watts?
Dora.
Well, this is
Come on.
Nah, one.
Dora.
You know, one. There isn't like a lamb what's just like in general. There's different types of lamb dishes.
Okay.
And it depends who makes the Dora what. It depends. No, this is genuine. This to educate. It's not easy. I have to think about this. You know?
What would you order if it was on the menu or you're at home?
Can you specify where am I getting the food?
Okay. This is at home.
At home?
At home, whoever's cooking is cooking both. What are you going to pick first? Or what are you going to eat majority of?
I will go with the lamb.
Okay. You don't agree?
I don't have to agree.
Okay. Ignore me. I just like to be extra right now.
I'm being extra?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think you're extra.
The real know the
Everyone
real.
has their
The real know
preferences.
the real.
You know, so you're not getting mine.
The Weeknd or Burna Boy?
Weekend or Burna Boy? What kind of question the Weekend? What? Abel, Team Abel. You know, even though you be messing with them, you know, the woman of the.
Burna Boy, I'm sorry.
You know,
I'm sorry.
you be messing with the
I'm so
unmelanated. What? You said Burna Boy? This is why you can't take her Durham Wood opinion seriously. What? Oh.
It's Burna Boy! It's the African giant. I'm sorry.
That's because the name of the album was bad, doesn't it?
That is a self-proclamation. Sorry,
East Africa.
Last one. This is also, it could be a hard one. Ethiopian music or Eritrean music?
I love my Eritrean music, but again, it's 9 ethnic groups in Eritrea. There is diversity in the music, and dances and stuff like that. But due to the sheer number of ethnic groups in Ethiopia and the diversity of music and sounds between northern and southern Ethiopia, I'd have to go with the Ethiopian music.
Okay.
I love my Eritrean side though, and all that stuff.
Yes.
You know,
This is difficult. I'm gonna have to say both. I can't
Oh
choose
my
one. I'm sorry. I love the Ethiopian music, but I love the Eritrean music. The drum just gets me, so I'm like,
I feel it.
So maybe Eritrean. I'll say Eritrean music.
Okay. Yes, we got both. Yes.
It's a yes, this or that question. It's not this or that or both.
Okay, Ghila.
It's in the name of the.
I'm making the rules today. She can pick both if she wants to. Well, thank you guys so much for being on
Thank you
my
for having us,
channel.
AC.
Yes, I appreciate it so much. I love that everybody got to hear your perspectives of how it was growing up African, growing up Eritrean and Ethiopian. I think that's important for them to hear. So thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below any comments that you have towards our conversation. Like this video, subscribe, all that jazz. I will see you guys in the next video.
Chloe Bailey, call me.
East Africa.
Time to end the video now.
I am